How do you build the perfect introduction? The first 4 to 7 seconds of any interaction, all you are trying to do is build trust by gaining rapport and showing that you are sharp as a tack, enthusiastic, and an expert in their field. This is how you gain instant trust with people.
What's up, you guys? Thanks for tuning in to the Purpose Driven Persuasion podcast, where if you're a highly ambitious person, you're going to learn how to go from being unfocused to unstoppable, and specifically by applying the tactics, strategies, and learning from the results of persuasion and influence demonstrated at a high level. What that means for you is by applying the things we talk about in this podcast of sales skills or persuasion and influence, you can become the most persuasive, influential, and impactful version of yourself and better serve the people around you that you love and care about the most. I'm your host, Hayden Schaap. For the last 10 years, I've obsessively tried to learn, apply, and teach these skills of persuasion and influence at the highest level and have seen incredible results in my own life and the people that we've worked with. And that's what we're talking about. Give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on all of the audio platforms as well. Make sure you follow for more. If you get some value out of this, I'd really appreciate if you shared it with somebody else as well, because I think a lot of people could benefit. Enjoy the episode, guys.
How to win trust in the first 4 to 7 seconds of any interaction without coming across as fake or being perceived as pushy. We're going to do it specifically for like on the doors and how to building like the perfect introduction. But all of the things that we talk about today, they're easily going to apply to any interaction you have with someone, and specifically, especially first interactions with people. It's very important. So I wanted to boil it down into some principles, and then I'll show you a few different application models for these principles that really anyone can apply. And it doesn't even matter how you train this stuff either. So first off, this training really isn't for everyone. It is not for people who are willing to use manipulation tactics to only serve themselves at the expense of other people. The reason why I said this and really want to be clear about this up front is because these things are very powerful. So if you're willing to use them, you can use them for however you want. And you just have to really make sure that you're not willing to use them in this way. And so if people already are, or they're just willing to do whatever they want to make money, then I'd rather just, the exit is first there and then out that way. So what's not required for success with this stuff is you don't have to have any natural charisma or be witty. Requires zero sales skills or previous sales success. And you don't need to, it doesn't matter if you're introvert or extrovert. Because a lot of people have this common belief that in sales that you have to be a certain personality type and be able to speak a certain way naturally, and that's not true. You can learn things to incorporate within your communication style that will just make you much more effective. And so we're going to try to boil that down to the principles of communication apply way beyond sales, so that they're very applicable to every interaction, which is why it's important that you use them for the right things, because you can get results with them so quickly and immediately, especially if you're doing sales with us this year, that it becomes very tempting to just want to use them in a way that is kind of amoral. Like it doesn't matter if it's in the person's best interest or not. So you really have to always check yourself to make sure. Warren Buffett says that when they hire managers for Berkshire Hathaway, they're always looking for 3 characteristics. Do you guys know what they are by chance? Integrity, intelligence, and energy. And then he makes this really interesting phrase right after he says that. He's like, if you're going against a competitor, you want them to be dumb and lazy, basically, have zero energy. Because if they have the second two, so intelligence and energy, but not the first one, integrity, then they'll kill you, is what he says. With any of the skills or tactics of persuasion and influence, and you can incorporate them into your own personality, my personal belief is that if you are a good person, you should obligate yourself to learn how to be the most persuasive and influential version of yourself. Because you will be greatly limited in who you can affect in your life if you don't know these things. And so that's why I have spent 10 years of my career trying to understand. I've always been fascinated with this, but I've really tried to understand, like, what are the principles that actually work in goal-oriented communication? Like how could you go harness certain things that would work across the board in being able to persuade and influence people in a dramatic way that would help them change their lives if you had good intentions for them. So that's kind of, we're going to scratch the surface with that. We have the top team in the country in total volume, averages per rep, all of that, and then the top offices in the country as well. Because a lot of the best guys were going and doing their version of these things, a couple of things I'm going to talk about today, and just masterfully well. I mean, that year, Braden Searle, you're the top rep in the company, and 700 plus accounts, and others have done just incredibly well with this stuff. It's really interesting for me to watch and like very impactful. And the real truth is though, like what actually makes that meaningful is like just how terrible I was relative to my peers when we started. And So I didn't do 200 accounts when I started my rookie year. I barely even, I hit 191. And so only reason I'm saying this is because a lot of these things have been like painstaking effort to kind of learn the principles of what works. And then really being able to apply them and replicate them. I think I've always said that's kind of one of your biggest competitive advantages if you don't start off very good at sales at first, is that it forces you to learn the principles. That's the biggest competitive advantage you could have at anything in life, is being very terrible, but still wanting to be good and the best, and then forcing yourself to go learn the principle, the underlying mechanics of what works in the thing you're trying to be the best at. Because otherwise, maybe you start off so good that you don't quite understand what those principles are, and so then you have to backtrack and learn them. It's much harder to do it that way, although it's still worth it. Who knows who Hagio Gracie is? They're one of like the OG family practitioners of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he at one time was the best, and he still is widely considered like the best gi Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in the world. So gi is like the funny thing that guys wear when they do Jiu-Jitsu. Sometimes they do no gi, sometimes gi. He said something really interesting that I'm gonna play for you guys here.
The process towards mastery, if you were to convert that to something that generalizes beyond jiu-jitsu, how can you get that good at a simple thing?
Practice.
And what?
That's simple.
The same exact thing over and over.
It's just a matter of how long it would take you.
So that's true. That's true.
I mean, like I said,
that's true.
Look how long it took me. People give up along the way.
This part is the most important part for the skills section of this training, because it's the mindset behind what it takes to have confidence. You have to have confidence when you talk to people on the doors and you're selling. And you have to have confidence in any sort of interaction you have with someone, that you're trying to win or gain their trust and therefore persuade and influence them. So where does confidence come from? I get this question a lot, is like, hey, what do I do to level up my sales? And then they always will finish like, I know it's like a mindset thing. I need to fix my mindset. So what would you suggest? And then it's surprising when I'm like, I actually would suggest to become the best at the skills first. Why? Because that breeds confidence, and then you can work on some additional mindset things to even bolster that skill set. But I just am fascinated by this answer. Gordon Ryan, who is the no-gi greatest jiu-jitsu practitioner, I think probably ever, but certainly in the world right now, this is his coach. And so he has a team called the Danaher Death Squad, which is a dope name. And they're just like wildly successful. I mean, anyone that comes through to school with him is like really, really high level. It's super impressive.
What was the mental side of things like? Is there some key insights you can give to their mental preparation?
I really think that people, when they talk about mental preparation, need to take a step back and realize that almost every element of what people describe as mental preparation has physical underpinnings. Literally 95% of what I teach the athletes is physical skills. And it's my belief that every mental aspect of competition, the most important of which will be confidence on stage, is a direct result of the accumulation of physical skills. People tend to see things like confidence as a mental state. It is, but it comes out of the performance of physical skills. All my life, I've seen sports psychologists try to create confidence in athletes through non-physical means. And it always ends up being the same kind of cheesy motivational speeches, highlight video reels where they try to pump artificial confidence into people. And I've never been impressed by this, nor have I seen it have any kind of positive effect on athlete performance. What I do see build confidence is the sense that athletes are developing skills and using them successfully under conditions that closely mirror the event they're preparing for. Once they get this down, that's where true confidence comes from. Confidence doesn't come from words, it comes from accumulated skills.
It is so true. The moment that you know, because of how good you are in your skill set, you can predict your sales outcomes every single day, the level of confidence that gives you, I mean, you're no longer afraid of any sort of sales situation. Now it's like really fun to work all day, every day at mastering and getting the results. And that applies to everything else in life. So that being said, what are the 3 principles essential to winning trust in the first 4 to 7 seconds of any interaction? In other words, how do you build the perfect introduction? So The first principle here is build rapport first. That is the goal. In the first 4 to 7 seconds of any interaction, all you are trying to do is build trust by gaining rapport and showing that you are, what are the 3 things that we always say? Competent, confident, service professional. That's like the message you're trying to get across, and that's the thing that they need to see you as. And then in terms of like the feeling that you're giving them, they need to know that this person knocking their door that is sharp as a tack, enthusiastic, and an expert in their field, right? So what does expert mean? Confident, competent, service professional. As we're building this out, we need to understand that in order to build rapport first, we have to do that with that mindset. This is how you gain instant trust with people. Secondly, be yourself. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. But it's with the caveat. It's like be yourself, but develop confidence and charisma within your own personality. And this is really cool because you can learn how to do this and you won't ever sound like you're fake if you do it the right way. And you can still harness these really powerful principles of persuasion. And then the third principle here is learn how to change people's state, how to sell to every type of customer, no matter how they interact with you. All right, build rapport first. So here's the tactical approach to how to do that. This is what the structure of any good introduction looks like. And so it doesn't matter who trains you or how. This is pretty much, these elements are always going to exist in a good introduction. First off, it's the greeting. Hey, how you doing today? Secondly, you introduce yourself. My name is Hayden. So one thing I tried last year and the year before that was super fun was I would say, hey, my name is Hayden. Nice to meet you. And I would just pause. And then almost every time they'd be like, I'm Jan, can I help you? I'm the route manager with Moxie. It's the Moxie Services, you know, the blue trucks. The reason I'm stopping by is because we've been dealing a lot with like the ant problem that's been here for a while. Everybody is still getting them, which is very unfortunate, but we've had amazing results with the Johnsons, Smiths, blah, blah, blah. Now, listen, if I can fit you guys in while I'm here, so now this is my hook. I just said who I was, I justified my existence with why I'm there, so it's a logical reason why I would be knocking your door, and I'm like, okay, fine, great. And then my hook would be, if I can fit you guys in while we're here, with the trucks already out, it's gonna be half off. Or I might go into a question there to just get to the next thing. Or I just be like, listen, everybody's loving it because we're just doing things very different. Or we've got some new things in our service right now, if this is true. And honestly, the results have just been phenomenal. And then you just sit there and wait. So that's kind of the structure of any introduction. You can literally plug in anything you want in that stuff. So what's the principle? The first thing is the greeting. How do you earn their trust instantly in the interaction of like greeting them for the first time and saying, hey, how are you doing today? Actually like communicating with them in the right way. Well, trust is built, this is the principle. Trust is built through character and competency. Now, what do I mean by that? Character is like who you are as a person. So like, do you have good intentions actually to sell them a service that's gonna make their lives better? That's why I love working for Moxie, because that is the thing that makes it so that I feel like I'm doing something ethical and I can bring my family and my best friends into our company and actually truly help them in an impactful way. First and foremost, that has to be there. So like, do you have their best interest in mind? Are you the type of person that cares about what happens with them after you leave in terms of like, are they getting the service you promised them? All of those things, that has nothing to do with skills. If I just ask you, are you a good person or not? Are you doing things for the right reasons? Do you do what you say you're gonna do? Are you the same person in the dark as you are in the light? That's a character thing. Competency is more about skills. Do you actually have the skill set and ability to help someone? And if you don't have either of those things, you don't have trust with them. How do you possibly communicate those two things in the first 2 seconds? So like if we're claiming that, hey, the reason why people should be here is because we have a high level skill set and we're trying to be the best versions of ourselves from a character standpoint. But then you get on the doors and you're like, nah, I don't know. I don't see how this applies to talking with customers every day. They only know me for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How does this apply? It applies in the way that you're communicating to them instantly in the underlying message of your voice. There's not enough time to be able to communicate with words your resume of why you have such a good character, why you're a strong person morally, and why you have their best interests at heart. But if I meet you for the first time and I say, hey man, how you doing today? Good. I'm glad. My name's Hayden, by the way. It's Moxie, the blue trucks. If I say it like that, it's hard for me to explain how powerful it is that like you just heard a paragraph, pages, an entire book of a message that could potentially communicate my character to you and how I feel about wanting to help and my competency in being able to. That's what you do in the greeting. And the problem is though, is like most sales trainers, when they go through this, they're like, listen, I do this thing that nobody else does, okay? And it's this icebreaker. It's this revolutionary. So when you start hearing words like revolutionary and innovative, I'm like, oh geez. It's like run for the hills if a sales trainer is telling you that the thing he's about to tell you, the one-liner of like how to build rapport with someone is like revolutionary. You gotta find this thing on the doorstep And then you comment about it in this very specific way. It's like, so an icebreaker? And you're like, yeah, it's an icebreaker. It's a perfect icebreaker though. But nobody else teaches it this way. Okay, so what happens if the way you just said that and you teach it to a guy who has no clue what he's doing and he says it differently, he gets shut down? Like, what's your answer to that? This doesn't matter, it's an icebreaker. It works every time. Like, is that why you have 80% of your reps go home? I don't know, maybe. It could be, probably. Extrapolate that across all their training and that's the answer. You can do this in many different ways, but the underlying principle is you need to connect with people in the way that you talk to them in your first interaction with them. And this is a way, again, it's not the only way, but this is the way that I really like to do it. It's this tonality called the I care or the I really want to know tonality. I know this seems so silly on the surface. You're like, hey, we're really gonna spend all this time dissecting and explaining, hey, how are you doing today? I actually debated putting on what is really in my script, hey, how you doing today? If I'm really caring about someone and I want them to feel connected to me right away, I'm gonna say, hey, how you doing today? Good. So what's going on in their mind if I say it like that? So you're like, should I know you? But you're not thinking like, get off my porch right now. You're now thinking, you're doubting yourself about how you originally perceived the door-to-door guy that just knocked your door. And it's all because of what your voice is doing here. If you were to draw this out and like just plot the notes, you would find where your register of voice lands on the scale, and then you would draw it like this, or just do the notes like this. Hey, like kind of up and then down. How you doing today? And you end down. But that inflection point in the middle is very important. So, and the underlying message here, like the paragraph of the words that you're hearing in summary is, this person actually cares and they really want to know. Like, hey, how you doing today? I really want to know. I really do. Or when you're not doing it in a question, you can communicate the same thing and be like, Joseph, I'm really glad to see you, man. How's everything going? Same inflection points, doing a declarative statement and a question. And the underlying message is, I really care, actually. I really want to know.
So when I was 21 years old, I had big dreams of a few things. Becoming a millionaire by the time I was 30, that was a big goal of mine. I wanted to own my own business, and I wanted to create financial freedom through investing in real estate, startups, any other type of vehicle that would give me passive income so that I could really provide for my family and my parents in a significant way because of how much they sacrificed for me growing up. I didn't grow up in the most well-off household, and so I really wanted to create a life for my family that they could be comfortable. I'm a grandchild of immigrants, and I had a lot of people in my life that came before me that have sacrificed a ton to create the good things that I have. I wanted to create financial freedom so that I could give back and serve significantly. I thought I was going to do that by, first off, playing football in the NFL. I obsessed over football growing up, but then I quickly got cut from my college team upon arriving, basically. So then I thought I was going to do that by getting into a prominent business school and excelling there, and then, getting a high-paying job out of college. And I didn't get into any of the business schools that I applied for, and there were more than one. So I had some, learning disabilities and a couple other things that felt like held me back in that way. Bottom line, it just didn't work. So after all the failed attempts to make money and try to achieve my dreams early, I was basically desperate and just really didn't think that it would all work out. I was doing a bunch of these hourly jobs and barely making ends meet and donating plasma, all the things you do when you're a poor college kid. I had a friend approach me and say that he had made $50,000 doing a sales job during the summer in between semesters. And he was a really well-known and highly prominent athlete. I had grown up hearing about how good he was at football. And so we became friends after I got home from a mission for my church. I just trusted him. So I looked into it. I ended up doing this sales job thinking that it would just be a better way to hold me over while I really figured out how I was going to provide financially for my family and really make a big dent in my dreams. Fast forward a few years later, I was with the same company doing that job over and over again while I was going to school, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now coaching and teaching other people how to do the same thing. It completely changed my life in a way that I did not expect, learning how to persuade and influence people at a high level because you practice that day in and day out. That translated over into every other relationship and aspect of my life that I care more about than just sales. And then obviously financially being able to get well ahead of all of my peers and the other people who were not willing to make those sacrifices of doing that sales job during the summer in the off months of school. And then fast forward even more ahead, I was able to become a millionaire by 26 and have a multiple $1 million net worth by the time I was 30, upwards of $10 million plus, and invest in real estate early on in my 20s, be able to give back and help pay for mission trips and do service opportunities that I just otherwise wouldn't have had. But what I'm most proud of is being able to give my family, my parents, my wife, my immediate family the life that they just really never had growing up. Because I think deep down we all want to be the type of people that when all is said and done, we actually have made a difference in other people's lives. And I feel like that's actually really the deep result of what this job ended up doing for me in a way that I just did not expect. Long story short, I'm obsessed with teaching the same things to other people. And since I have gotten to management and now I'm a partner in our company, I've been able to work with upwards of over 1,000 sales reps who are young, ambitious, college-age kids mostly, who start doing this job just to pay for school, but end up finding out that it's highly impactful for every other aspect of their life. So right now we are hiring and we have limited spots available to take on of people. So if you're interested, there's a link in the description of this video or in my bio. You can check that out, apply and see if you're a good fit or a candidate for this job. We have personality profiles that can match you with income and earning potential that is very much historically accurate of people that have gone in our program before. And if you take the leap of faith and at least learn about whether this could be a good fit for you, I think you're going to be not only really impressed, but if your results are even half as good as what everyone else has gone through this program has experienced, the only problem that you'll have is that 1, you didn't know about this sooner, and 2, that you didn't sign up and try to do it yesterday. All right, so give it a shot. Check out the link in my bio, and I'll see you guys in the rest of the episode.
Did you guys watch any of like the Mitt Romney campaign? So there was this dilemma that everyone hated Mitt Romney that didn't already know him. The reason why is because, and they were trying to claim that it was many other things, like, oh, he's not relatable, and so they would ruffle his hair up or put him in a, I don't even know, like a sweater or something, a vest instead of a vest instead of in a flannel instead of a suit. Like, yeah, that'll fix it, right? You can't help but fix how you talk to people when the thing you're saying to them, the underlying message is, I hate you. You know how you would say? You'd say, hey, how are you? I hate you and don't really care. That's like the underlying message of my voice. Hey, how are you? Instead of, hey man, how are you? So already, I mean, this is like a very small line. If you were to write out the whole script, a very small line. But if you were to practice this every day and try to get really good at any time you ask a question where you need the customer to feel that you care about them and that you actually want to know the answer to the question, then that is how you should say it. What does that do in terms of what we were talking about earlier with like communicating character? The problem is the customer can't tell if I'm actually a good person right there or not. But if I am, and I ask that first question this way, that's very powerful at winning someone's trust, like immediately. What did you say, Brett?
I think this is a little overlooked because the year that you taught me this, going from my first summer to my second summer, I had a lot more people start to listen to me. That's all I needed was just more people to listen. I don't even know if necessarily my skills and like after my introduction got better. All I know is that like my first 4 to 7 seconds literally was like a massive difference.
Next one, make sure you communicate genuineness, so be yourself and be the most charismatic version of yourself. So here we are in the introduction, in the who you are and why you're there portion of this. The principle here is that charisma is a function of confidence, honesty, and I don't just mean honesty in you're telling the truth. I actually more mean honesty in terms of like, does the feeling and the message of your voice match what you're saying and your body language? So if I'm saying, hey, how are you? And I'm communicating it as if I don't actually care about you, and that is what I mean by like honesty or dishonest. All the customer knows is like, this guy's for sure lying to me. And then when you start getting outside of your own register of voice, and you're like, hey, my name's Hayden, I'm with Moxie Pest Control. If you want someone to actually get vilely pissed at you, don't be confident and like an a-hole to them, because they'll actually do what you ask them to do. If you're like, hey, just give me a glass of water, I'm really thirsty, they'll be like, okay, sweet, and they'll just go get a glass of water. But if you're like, hey, I'm Hayden with Moxie Pest Control, it's like, I'm sick of you guys, like, get the freak off my door. So that's what that will turn into. People will cut you off, or they won't pay attention to the rest of your pitch if you're not confident or charismatic or authentic. And both of those are problematic because they don't need you getting sales. So first off, genuineness. How do you communicate genuineness? You speak in your normal register of voice. So what does it sound like to speak outside of your register of voice? It's like, I'm right here because I'm a little nervous, and like normally, if you don't know me, and I knock your door, and I'm like, hey, my name's Hayden, I'm with Moxie Pest Control, and the reason I'm stopping by, all you know is that whoever that guy is probably doesn't normally sound like that. And also, he's treating me like the way I talk to my child and my dog. And that is like the most disrespectful thing you can do to someone. If I went up to someone, I was like, oh, Daniel, you look so... Oh. Yeah, if I don't know Daniel, he's gonna be like, all right, dude, can you stop that, please? And then if I keep doing it, but that's what you do on the doors. You're like, and he's like, can you please stop that? And it's like, I'm not. Are you sure? Are you okay? Because I got really. And he's like, dude, I'm like really though. I'm like about to injure you. Or what's the opposite of that? Lower your register of voice. You want to be a tryhard to be like, hey, my name's Hayden. And again, all they're saying is like, now do I not only know that this person is not who he says he is, but he's also trying way too hard, and he's incredibly pretentious, which I also hate. It's like the only part of that that's actually good is that you're not talking to them like a dog or a child. Everything else is horrible. Confidence. This is the next thing you need to communicate. When in doubt, learn to speak in absolute certainty. This is another tonality that you should just learn to default to if you want to have any sort of success during the summer. If this is the only tonality you use, Make sure it's absolute certainty when you're talking to people. You're probably going to get people who will be a little bit upset at you when they tell you no and you like 10 times and you're still talking to them like this. But it is way better than like the alternative, than doing something else that is not that. And then charisma, once you've mastered absolute certainty, it's a little more of a high level skill. You want to shift tonalities frequently and do so honestly, so that when you shift the tonalities, it's specifically so that it matches the communication you're trying to portray to them and the message, meaning it has to match with the words you're saying and your body language, okay? And again, I know that a lot of this will be like maybe over people's heads, or maybe is you're like, come on, this is so basic. But like it's really important because these are the principles that actually work. Like Hodger Gracie was saying, you know, that guy's the best in the world, and he's saying that practice the basics over and over and over again. How does this actually look in the script? This is where this gets like really fun. An example of confidence, charisma, is absolute certainty and then shifting that tonality into phrasing a declarative as a question. Absolute certainty, when I'm talking like this sales training is by far the best sales training that you could possibly be at right now. What's the message of my voice? Not the words that I'm saying, but what's the message of my voice when I'm talking like this? Absolute certainty. That's actually why it's named that. They're just named after the message, honestly. So how would you apply this in an introduction? Well, if there's a part of the introduction where maybe they don't know a certain fact, but you do. And remember, what am I trying to be perceived as in the first 4 to 7 seconds? We're like 2.5 seconds in here. Expert, enthusiastic, and sharp, right? And then what it means to be an expert, in my field, is I'm confident, competent, service professional. So it's for sure gonna make me sound confident. So I would just say, hey, where do I need to sound confident in order to portray that message? I might do it in my name and Moxie Services if they have no clue what that is. Let's say we've been in the market for a year or two is all. I might assume that they just don't know what it is. And so I'll say, hey, it's Hayden with Moxie Services. Down tone. You end always down and you make it staccato like beats. It's Hayden with Moxie Services. So I'm declaring that is me, and I'm absolutely certain it's me, by the way. And I'm also absolutely certain that Moxie is the company I work for, and you should know something about it. It's important that you understand that because there's this confidence behind the fact that there's a ton of underlying messages there. It's like we're really good at what we do, all of this stuff. And then, but it gets really cool when you can shift. Normally I would say I'm Hayden with Moxie Services, you know, the pest control. And I would actually end on an uptone at the end, or an up pitch. But why on earth would you end in an up pitch ever? Because this used to be kind of perceived as like very bad. And it actually is if you don't know how to control it. It's like very bad to do that all the time. The underlying message is like, right? If I want you to feel like you should know what it is, not know me or anything, or like connect with me. If I want you to feel like you should know what I'm saying, then I'm gonna just phrase that, whatever that is, in an up pitch at the end as a declarative, but phrase it like I'm asking a question almost, right? So I'm gonna say, hey, it's Hayden with Moxie Services. You know, the blue vans, right up at the end. If you're listening to me and I'm confident and I don't have a pause there, you're gonna think to yourself like, have I seen blue vans before? Why is this powerful? Whether or not they know that that's what they're thinking, they cannot keep up with psychologically what's happening there, the message, because their first thought is like, door-to-door salesman. Last experience I had with door-to-door salesman, I absolutely hated, which is almost always going to be true because everybody sucks at being door-to-door salesman, and usually also unethical. So they're gonna feel like, all they remember is their first experience. And then you say, hey, how you doing today? You're like, I don't remember you. Definitely not a relative, because none of my relatives dress like that, but like, have I met you before? Are you guys from the neighborhood? Is this like someone from the city maybe, and you're supposed to be here? I have an appointment with you. They went from saying, what do I gotta do to get this guy at my doorstep, to now just questioning that, right? And now you go, it's Hayden with Moxie Services, you know, the blue vans. And I'll even like smile right there too. And so then their mind is like, Hayden, Moxie Services, this guy's kind of confident at least, like I can count on that, but like, you know, the blue vans, and you're like, blue vans, have I seen blue vans before? Oh, my point is like, this isn't gonna get you a sale, but it's definitely gonna make it so they don't cut you off. And we stack all these messages on top of each other, and by the end of it, you're like, okay, please sign me up. Just what do I gotta do? Because I want the service. This next one, I wanna show you, this is an example. It's a little more high level. So like, again, these are just applications of the principle of how to connect with someone and be genuine in yourself, right? So this next one is, you phrase the declarative as a question, and then you go straight into what's called mystery and intrigue. So when you talk about this, mystery and intrigue, it's like you're trying to let them let them feel like there's a secret that you have that they don't know, but you do, and it's like really good. This is how this sounds. Watch this. And I'm actually gonna do my name in this phrase declarative as a question as well, because what I'm trying to get across to a customer when I'm personally on the doors is I'm gonna say, you should know who I am. You should know what my company is. I'll give you a couple of chances to remember it, so I'll mention the blue vans, and I definitely got something that you're gonna want to pay attention to. That's the message I'm trying to get across to them. So I'll say, hey, how you doing today? First of all, because I'm connecting, I really actually do care. Yeah, my name's Hayden. I'm with Moxie Services, the blue vans. The reason I'm stopping by is because, and then I go on to the rest of my pitch there. And that one is really, really easy to apply. And that one shift in tonality there causes people to just start it's just bonkers how well it works. They're just like, geez. They start hanging on your every word from that point forward. And so all you have to do really, if you've got someone really listening to you and they're a qualified buyer, you just don't screw it up after that. That's it. Principle number 3 is learn to change people's emotional state. Because you might be wondering, okay, Hayden, what about the guy that comes out of the door and he's just furious that you're there? Surely it's not possible to sell that guy, right? Maybe. What about the person who's really annoyed with you? I just hate talking to people that I knock their doorstep and they're just like, well, I just don't want to talk to this person. Or what about the person that's eating dinner and they're really rushed and frantic? What about the person that's about to leave? So there's all these scenarios that might cause you to think surely this will not work with them. When Braden Stroll became a team leader and he sold 400 or 500 accounts a year, the first time I knocked with him that season, it was just absolutely fascinating to me how he would change people's emotional state in a split second. What on earth is he doing? The almost seemingly impossible customers. This is what you do in that situation. All right, this is called pace, lead. Yeah, man, my kids are fighting. What are you doing? I don't have time for this. Is this important? So if someone says that, who could do that voice really well as if they were that angry? Hey, how are you today?
What was your name?
It's Hayden. What's your name?
Time, Hayden.
No problem, man. I'll be
You're not the guy.
At the very least, you'll be able to help me out, and I'll let you go back to your kids. How you doing today, by the way?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good, man. If you try this, it is fascinating how well it works, actually. Just go try it just to see if it works, okay? So this is what's going on in the customer's mind. They're like, get off my doorstep. I don't want to talk with you right now. I have better things to do, and you're just scum of the earth. And when you talk back to them, here's the principle. People like being talked to in the same tone of voices. And why? Because we actually like only surrounding ourselves with people that like us. We get very uncomfortable when we're around people that are not like us. It's the same thing from a vocal standpoint, on its surface. Anytime someone talks to you, this is a rule of thumb across the conversation that will change your sales game. Whenever a customer says anything, you should meet them at the same tone of voice in the next thing that you say. Well, give me someone who's kind of shy and maybe a little reserved.
Can I help you?
Sorry to bother you. My name's Hayden. How are you doing, by the way?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. I'll be brief. So my name's Hayden. Awesome. I'm the Moxie Services. You've seen the blue vans, right? So the reason I'm stopping by right now is because what did I do there? So I just literally, if you were to turn off the words and you couldn't actually discern what the words were, it'd be the same exact inflections vocally in how he responds to me. Have you guys ever seen the penny stock scene in The Wolf of Wall Street? There's this part in the scene where he's like, oh man, I could pay off my mortgage with that. And then Belford, yeah, you're right, you could pay off your mortgage. He's literally practicing this principle. Pace, lead. Pace them first where they're at. You meet them in their world. You pace them where they're at, and then you lead them exactly where you want them to go. That's exactly what's happening. That's the most powerful way to communicate with anyone. The example I always like to use is if I'm talking with a friend, and let's just say something really tragic happened. I use this example a lot because it's very unlikely that it's actually happened to people in the room. But we will see. Let's say your house burned down, and I'm your friend. How would you tell me that happened?
My house is gone, dude.
So what happens if Brayden says that and I'm like, what? Your house? I can't believe it. I thought that was going to happen way sooner. An even better example is what words would I say without being dude, I'm so sorry. What if I'm so sorry. I don't know how, that's crazy. Yeah. How insincere is that to not actually, to talk that way even? Where you're like, bro, I'm really sorry, but obviously I don't care. That's the message, right? The normal mode of human communication is to always meet, if you're good at communication whatsoever, you're always gonna meet the person talking at where they're at. Always. I've heard this example of someone, their kid had a really bad day at school or something, and they're really upset at a friend that was giving them a hard time. So they come home from school, and they're like, Dad, I'm just furious with this person, and so I got in a fight, but I just can't believe that this person did this to me. Now what happens if you're the parent and you're like, really again? Do we have to deal with this again? Why is that bad just from a tonality standpoint vocally? Because I'm not empathizing whatsoever with my voice, right? But if he goes, hey, yeah, I just got in a fight, and I know it's my fault, but I can't believe that he did this to me again. And a parent, if you want to get good practice at how to relate to your kids, you'd probably do something like, really? Who was it? Tell me who it was. I want to know who it was, and we're gonna fix this right now. But are you okay, by the way? What happened? Because where do I want my child to be? I'd like him to be calm and collected. Will I ever be able to influence him if he's not? No. But you don't do that by being calm and collected right away. Why? Because he's not calm and collected. It's called matching. It's not mimicking or mirroring. You match them, And then where do you need them to go? Right there. So we do the same thing when we check in and we say, hey, does that make sense? You see what I'm saying here? And as you're like halfway through the script, so you just explain a future event, you're like, you see what I'm saying here? And you're like, oh yeah. Is that totally certain? I'm not gonna get a sell. He's like, oh yeah. So the way I just would respond to you, because I need you to be certain in order for me to sell to you. So I'm gonna be like, yeah, and obviously you see now why it's so good, right? But like, listen, the real beauty about what I do, and now I'm raising my level of certainty because I need you to be certain now. At the beginning of the sale though, you're trying to get them to where you can connect back to that I really want to know or that connection phase. Because you don't need them to be certain yet, you just need them to trust you. And that comes later. So it's however they come out, hot, cold, whatever, discuss it or not, you just kind of act the same way. If someone's like, hey, you're like the 10th guy today, and honestly, I'm just really sick of it and I don't have time. You're like, listen, I feel the exact same way, and sometimes I just hate being in this industry because that's what I have to deal with is jokers like them. And then you don't ever pay attention to someone like me. Sorry, I was ranting. How are you doing today, by the way? What do you think that person's gonna do? They'll be like, hallelujah. Like someone competent that actually cares. You guys remember the two things you have to have and be in order to gain trust. Remember what they were? Character, who you are, and competency. You can map out your life plan, but when the action starts, it may not go the way you planned. I would actually add it probably always will not go the way you planned. And you're down to your reflexes. That means your training, preparation. That's where your road work shows. If you cheated on that, so if you cheated on your training preparation in the dark hours of the morning, well, you're going to get found out now under the bright lights. But why I love this is because I think it applies actually way more to your character. Because on its head, this would suggest that he's only talking about skills, right? Where do you train, if not skills? But for me, it's actually more important to apply this to character. If you cheat on your values in the dark of the morning, alarm goes off, consistently, you just start always telling yourself that I never do what I say the first thing in the morning anyway, then you will be found out the more people get to know you. You cannot help but hide who you are. I thought of this quote, which I really love, is what you are shouts so loudly in my ears I can't hear what you say. And then that made me think of this, what I just read recently by Stephen Covey talks about this one, by William George Thornton. Into the hands of every individual is given a marvelous power for good or evil, the silent, unconscious, unseen influence of his life. This is simply the constant radiation of what man really is, not what he pretends to be. And to just finish this off, Socrates, the greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. It's like aligning the character, the person that you want to be, that you're trying to be perceived as, with who you actually are. For me, it's more important to be a good person than it is to have skills, but when you can combine both of them, you can be a really very powerful influence for good, and I can attest to that firsthand.
Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy.